Hello and welcome, friends. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on how to color whites that wow. And I've mentioned before that I rarely use just gray to shade my whites, and today I'm going to show you exactly how I achieve some whites with depth in them, and I thought this Hydrangea Blooms stamp set would be perfect for a demonstration. Now I've already colored one set of these blooms here, and I'm going to show you how to color the second set. I'm going to leave this in mostly real time, and then we're also going to have a discussion about the title of this video. Now, but first off, I just wanted to show you this is the Hydrangea Blooms stamp set. It is available in the store right now. It's been available for a couple of weeks, and honestly, I've kind of been putting off this video. And that's because this is my last stamp set with W+9. We'll get more into that in just a second. Here is a picture of the hydrangeas from my garden, and I'm focusing in on this white cluster here. These are the Blushing Bride hydrangeas. So they start out as this beautiful white with these hints of pink and green in them, and as they age, they turn into this deep rose color. So this is the cluster here that I'm going to color on camera for you. And you can see here I've pulled some odd colors: RV10, E00, B60, and G20. And these colors are not very sexy. They're not overly exciting. Some of them are quite dull, but you need these colors in your arsenal if you want to color some whites that are full of life, right? It can be very easy to have your whites look very flat, especially if you're just shading them with gray. But using some of these toned down, even muddier colors is the secret to achieving realistic whites. So here I've started by putting down a little bit of that RV10, and it was quite bright, and I used very little of it. Then I used that E00 to pull those pinks out. This also toned down the vibrancy of that RV10 because it is quite bright, but by using it in such little amounts and then using that E00 to pull it out, I'm able to knock it back. Here I'm using the BG70 to further knock that back, right? So by putting that blue-green over top of that E00, which is very warm, we put a very cool color over a warm color, we're kind of canceling them out. But it's not a flat gray. You can still see that hints of warmth in there, and you can see those hints of that blue-green in there. So again, a little dot of that RV10, and now I'm using that E00 to pull it out. I am coloring this petal by petal, but I'm not completely filling in each petal. I'm going to do this around the entire flower. I am not going to color every petal identical because if you remember back to our photo, every petal isn't identical. Some of it has hints of green in it. Some of them have these little dots of pink. Some of them are much cooler. Some of them are much warmer. So by adding in those variations of not only color, but of the warmth, the tonal value of the colors, the warmth and the cool, you're really going to achieve realistic whites. And it's really not going to look white until you start putting all of the rest of the color around it. So just bear with me here. Right now, this flower looks like it's bruised. And it kind of looks like an aged bruise, right? That's kind of what you're going for here. It looks like the colors are very muted, very muddy, but really when you have something that's colored white, the colors that you're going to see on that object are the colors that are around it that are reflected onto it. So when the sunlight hits the leaves and that color from the leaves is bouncing off of the white, you're going to see more green. Where the flower is in shadow, you're going to have those cooler tones of the blues and the violets. Now this one is a little bit of an exception because it does have some flecks of color in the flowers, but they're not a full pink flower. It's a white flower with some specks of pink, or it's a white flower with some specks of green. So that's why I'm going through, and when I do put down those brighter colors, I'm using very little of it, and then I'm using that lighter or more muted marker to pull out those vibrant colors and knock them back just a little. So I'm going to pull up that G20, and you can see that I'm adding that right on top of petals that I've already colored. Again, this is going to further muddy up some of that color, But then where the green is going over areas where there isn't any color, it's going to be true green. If it's going over that E quadruple zero, which is much warmer, they're going to cancel each other out. So I'm going to get several shades of that green by just going over the colors that I've already done. So in this flower, again, just little dots of that G20 and then pulling that out with the E quadruple zero. And you'll notice that I'm not filling in the whole flower. I'm leaving a lot of white edges. These are going to be the highlights of the flower where the sun is catching the edges of those petals. I'm going to continue every flower like this, putting down just a little bit of a brighter color and then using the more muted colors to knock it back or pull them out. I'm always working petal by petal on these main flowers. I'm not going to work petal by petal on every single flower. A hydrangea is a cluster of a lot of tiny flowers. So instead of trying to color every single petal here, I'm going to pick some key flowers here. And I'm going to make those key flowers my focal point. So here I've got two that I've decided to pull out. I'm going to spend the bulk of my time on my focal flowers. So I'll pick out which ones I want to be my focal flower. I will spend some more time on those. And then the other ones, I will just add swipes of color to. We'll be getting to that here in just a minute, but I wanted to point that out because there's a lot of little flowers in here and you can quickly lose track of what is what. So by picking out my focal flowers first and working on those, I make sure that I have a few areas of this arrangement that are going to be well defined. So I've laid down a little bit of that RV10 and again, using that E quadruple zero to pull that pink across the rest of the petal. So we're going to fade from a brighter pink there in the center out to a very light cream towards the edge. Here where the two petals are touching, I'm adding that BG70. It's going to act as my shadow. I'm adding it to the side where the two petals are overlapping and towards the center. This is going to create cast shadows and then a shadow down inside the flower so that the flower looks cupped. So there you can see again, it looks like a bruise, but it does definitely give you a more realistic white and a lot more interest than just using a solid gray. I'm also going to use that BG70 here to push this flower behind the one that's on top. So now I'm going to start adding some swipes of this BG70 to a couple petals, just pulling out a couple. This is going to help me visually identify where some of these petals are so that I don't lose them as I continue to fill things in. Because when you're coloring no line, it's really easy to lose your lines. So here I'm just adding a little bit of shadow, a little bit of shade to some of these petals back here so that I don't lose track of them. So again, I'm going to continue doing this around the rest of this image. Now let's talk about the title of this video and the fact that this is my last stamp set with W+9. So what does that mean? I own W+9. I am the illustrator for W+9. So how could this possibly be my last stamp set? Well, that is because I am closing W+9, you guys. And this may not come as a shock to many of y'all. Over the last couple of years, even though I have become way more active on my YouTube and I am definitely posting more on social media again, I had some family things that required more of my attention, more of my time. And it was this forced hiatus from W+9 that really allowed me to step back and evaluate what I truly loved about what I was doing and what I didn't really love. And honestly, it's the creating. The creating is what brings me joy. I love illustrating, I love teaching, and I love creating. However, I do not like the business side of it. I don't like dealing with manufacturing. I don't like dealing with inventory. I really, really don't enjoy having anybody else's livelihood depend on me. And I always knew that I wanted to be small. I never wanted to have a big warehouse and lots of employees. It just wasn't something that I ever envisioned for W+9. That being said, all of the things that I had envisioned and the whole reason that I started W+9, the goals that I had, I achieved them. So really W plus 9 as an e-commerce store, as a product manufacturing craft supply company, it ran its course, and it really isn't the thing that brings me joy. So that being said, I am going to close W plus 9 as a storefront. Now, will I still be in the industry? Absolutely. I have no plans of going anywhere anytime soon. Like I said, the creating, the teaching, this is what brings me joy. I feel like this is what I am truly best at. I'm not a business person. Not great at that part. It just doesn't excite me. And to be honest, I think that you should go where your strengths are. And I think that this is where my strengths are at, the teaching and the creating. So I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. You'll see tons of product here. You'll see tons of techniques. You'll see tons of tutorials and teaching. I will definitely have more time for it now. You guys have seen over the last year, my channel has been much more active again. And that's because I focused more on the actual art, the actual creating, and less on my own personal store and brand. And I'm fine with that. So I don't feel like this is a sad thing. You guys, I am excited for this next chapter. Like I said, I'm still going to be around. I am much more enjoy hyping other people than I do hyping myself. It makes me uncomfortable. I've never liked it. If you've been around here a while, you probably know that. I'm always much more enthusiastic about hyping someone else than my own stuff. It's just not for me. So that being said, definitely you will have more content here than you've had ever before. My goal, my plan is to have W plus 9 shut down by the end of the year. So December 31st is my store closing date. That is, I want it done and wrapped up so I don't have to roll into another tax year with it. We will be running clearance sales starting now. So if there is anything in the store that you guys have been holding off on, anything that you want, if you've got stamp sets that you never picked up the dies for, if they're there, I would grab them because we are just going to be clearing everything out. Like I said, I want it all gone. I want it all done by December 31st. I'm super excited, you guys. I've already got plans to work with some other really great companies in the industry. Hopefully, I will have some more opportunities that will arise. But y'all aren't getting rid of me that easy. And I really hope that you guys will join me beyond W plus 9. As far as the brand goes, I really don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. And maybe you guys could help me with that. All of my social media is under W plus 9, and I really don't want to start over rebuilding an audience there. Breaking into that algorithm is really, really difficult. So I don't know if I just want to rebrand my current social media outlets and just change the name maybe over to my name, which is Dawn Woolslegel. W plus 9 has always stood for Woolslegel. It's a big name. Nobody can ever pronounce it. So W plus 9 letters. I was given that nickname when I first got married at my old company, at a company that I worked for previous. Nobody could pronounce it, and they just nicknamed me W plus 9. So that's where that came from. Seems odd, but they were a lot of ex-military, and they call each other by their last names. So my former name was Easy, and when it became Woolslegel, they just W plus 9. That's a very common thing in the military. If you're a military family, you understand. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to change those over. I definitely, like I said, do not want to start from scratch. What do you guys think? Should I leave it as W plus 9, or would that be confusing to people, or just switch the names of them to my true name? I lean more toward wanting to use my true name just to alleviate any confusion, but that may cause confusion as well. That's my only hiccup that's left. So other than that, I'm at peace with it. I'm super excited, and like I said, hopefully, I know some of you are going to be disappointed, but I think there will be some opportunities for me to still illustrate here and there. So that doesn't mean that my designs as well are never going to see the light of day again. So don't worry about that. I do plan on trying. I don't know what the future brings, you guys. I don't know what the future brings. All I know is that I'm super excited for it. And in the meantime, I'm just going to continue doing what I love doing, and that is providing this content to you guys, creating with wonderful products, and providing instruction here. So speaking of instruction, we're almost to the end of coloring up these hydrangeas. You can see here I've used a little RV95 here in the very centers of my hydrangeas. And that's just going to add that punch, that depth, right? We've got very, very soft colors, so that can easily make it look like my image is just washed out. By adding those little pops of that deeper color, it's going to add that contrast back in. And now this looks intentional. Looks like my petals are white with shadows or hints of color in them, and the centers are dark. It's all about adding in that contrast. Anytime, even coloring whites, you guys, you need that contrast. Now, adding in our leaves around these white hydrangeas are really going to further accentuate the fact that they are actually white. You can see in the cluster that I've already colored, they read as white. They read as a white object because they have all of that true deep color around them. Here in the one that we're coloring right now, it still may look a little odd, but it's definitely looking more like white flowers. And again, once we add those leaves around this cluster, it's absolutely going to make these read as white and not like bruised looking flowers. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to add some depth to this image here. So you can see the florals in the bottom, they have much more defined shadows. Some of those petal edges look much more crisp and clean. That is because we've added some darker, deeper shadows behind some of the flowers and the petals. So here I'm taking the B60 and I'm going to create some deeper shadows. I'm going to do what's called negative painting or negative coloring. I am adding a darker color behind my focal petals or behind my focal flowers to push those forward. So I'm going to lay down a little B60 and then I'm going to use that BG70 to soften that out. So by coloring the space behind a petal, I'm defining the edge of the one. So by coloring the space behind a petal, I'm defining the edge of that petal. So you can see in that one that I just laid down, I pushed that petal to the foreground. I'm also going to take this B60 and I'm going to add some deeper shadows to some of the centers of the flowers. The further away the flower is from you, the darker the shadow is going to be. So any of the flowers that I want to look recessed, I'm going to add a little bit darker shadow to those centers and it's going to make them look more cupped. And likewise, it can make those flowers look further away from you. Because the hydrangea is kind of ball shaped, so if we're looking at it, the flowers on the top of that ball are going to be closest to us, and as it rounds away from us, those flowers get further from us, so they're going to be more in shadow. So by varying the depth and the level of the shadows in this, we're going to give it a more 3D look. And you can really see that in the cluster that I've already colored. There's definitely much more shading and shadow on the outer edges of each of the cluster. Now, another thing that we can do to add depth is to add some separation between each of the individual flowers. So when you're looking at this cluster of flowers, there's going to be spots that you can see through the flower. Maybe there'll be a leaf back there that you can see, or you're seeing through to the other side of that cluster of flowers. So by adding some deeper shadows in between the petals, and I'm just basically making little triangles, maybe little rectangles, little circles, I'm just filling in the gaps between these flowers. And honestly, in some spots, you guys, I'm just making it up. We're doing no line coloring, and once you start getting all this color in here, sometimes you can lose your lines. I do this all the time. Make it up. Add in some deeper areas, add in some lighter areas. It's all going to make sense, right? The only actual flowers I can pick out in this cluster as full flowers are those top three, the three that I started with. The rest just look like random petals, but because our mind sees this, we recognize it as a hydrangea. We know what a hydrangea looks like. You're going to fill in the blanks. Your mind fills in the blanks. So here I'm just going over with that bead 60 and reinforcing some of those, what would be the gaps between each of the flowers. And again, we're not coloring the actual flowers now, you guys. We are coloring the negative space between the flowers. But by doing this, we are further defining the flowers. It's very interesting how it works, right? By coloring the space around the flowers, we define the edges of our flowers. This is especially important when you're coloring white objects because you're not taking any color all the way to the edge of the petal. So by filling in the space behind and around the petal, you're defining the actual shape. Now, I could sit and play with this all day long. Could easily continue adding details here and there, but at some point, you really have to force yourself to stop. You need to stop and add in the rest of the colors around your image. Now, this is especially important when you're doing white because it is very easy to add too much color and you will lose your look of white. But once you add your other colors around it, you'll be able to really see what needs more and what's fine just as it is. This is also going to help you identify where you need more contrast in your white objects. Because once you add all of this depth here, I've started adding one of the leaves here and we've got some really deep green there. This is immediately already telling me that I'm going to need a couple of shots of some deep green somewhere in that floral cluster. And again, you can see those shots of much darker blue grays and greens in the previous bloom that I colored over on the right side of the screen. That was because once you add in those dark greens, you really need to balance it out and put in some of those shots of darker colors into the floral bouquet itself. This will keep it from looking like it's bleached out or not really part of the image, right? If we have this level of green, this level of depth in our green and our leaves, then we're definitely going to have something of that same depth somewhere else in the flowers, whether it be in one of the shadows, whether it be in a couple areas in between the flowers themselves and some of the gaps between the flowers. Don't need a lot. You don't want to do too much because you still want these to read as white, but you will definitely need some darker shadow in there somewhere. If this level of depth occurs in the green in this leaf, then it's most certainly going to occur in some of the gaps between your flowers. You want to make the image cohesive. Again, you don't need a ton of it, just a couple little spots of it to tie it all together. Make it look more realistic and like the lighting is all the same. Okay, so I'll just finish up these leaves, add those darker spots in between, and you can see here's our finished image thus far, but I want to add in some more florals. So I grabbed our Darling Dahlias, and we're gonna stamp some of these in to create an all over background. But first I'll need to create a mask to cover up my hydrangeas. I want the hydrangeas to be on top and the dahlias to be behind. So I've got some Eclipse masking paper here, and I'm just going to stamp this and then trim it out to create a mask. And I'll be able to use this same mask for both sides of my masking. All right, so now that we've got our mask in place, we can go ahead and do our stamping. And you can see here that I took that one mask and I cut it in half, or into pieces actually, so that I could do my masking without having to do more than one mask. I only stamped portions of the hydrangea onto the card, so I didn't need the mask full. I just cut off the portions that I needed to do my masking while I stamp. And I'm using the Honeybee Stamps No Line Coloring ink here, and this is exactly what I used to stamp the hydrangeas. And now that that's all done, I'm going to show you just a little portion of doing the dahlia. Here you can see I've already colored one of them, and I colored this leaf. I don't know what I was thinking. It is a no-go, not good, but I do end up fixing it in the end. In the meantime, I thought I would show you how to color this dahlia here. This one has more of a closed center. It hasn't fully opened up yet, so I thought I would show you how I go about coloring that. So for this flower, the main colors I'm going to use are R22, R01, YR20, and E_0. Now, I know this looks like a strange color combo, but it's all going to work out in the end. Just trust me here. So for the center area, these petals are in a tight, compact ball. They haven't opened up yet. And here at the base, instead of just going with a darker coral color, I'm going to come in with YG11 and put in my shadows. Now this green is going to be the opposite of red on the color wheel, so it's going to help desaturate that red in the shadowed areas and give us a more realistic shadow. So you can see there, I just put down the tiniest little bit of that YG11, and now I'm coming over that with the R22. Now you can see that this definitely made this a more muted red. It's not quite as bright, not quite as hot as the color is on its own. Then I've taken the R01 and I'm going to soften that edge and create a transition from the R22 to the R01. And now I'm coming in with that YR20 and finishing off the petal there all the way to the end with that YR20. Now this is going to give me a nuance of color from that corally pink color all the way out to a more yellow color. This is a great way to stretch your markers instead of using, say, an R01, an R22, and an R24. This is going to give us more realistic, desaturated, muted shadows, and then again create that nuance of color from that red out to that yellow. So I'm going to do the same thing all the way around the circle for each petal. Now these are small petals here in the center, and you might find using colored pencils here to be easier. I am just using the very, very tip of the marker, but again, these are small areas and you could definitely use colored pencils to do this instead. So by painting the green underneath our color, this is something, it's a technique called underpainting. It's something that I do often, especially in watercolor. I do both underpainting and glazing. So in underpainting, you put the color underneath, and then in glazing, you come over your previous color with a new color. And both of these techniques are fantastic for creating shadows, but also for just creating nuances in color. So if realism is something that you want to dip your toes into, definitely make sure that you take a look at glazing and underpainting. They are going to really extend the range of color that you have available to you. Let's face it, we don't all own all of the markers, and you don't need to own all of the markers. I don't have nearly, I maybe have half, if that. But as long as you understand color mixing and color theory, you can create any color that you want. Alcohol markers are transparent by nature, which means that you can layer them over each other and blend them together to create new colors. So this is definitely something that you should practice if you are interested in doing more realism. And I do plan on doing more videos focusing on more technique-driven things, more of your fine art skills, more color theory. Don't worry, we'll still be doing tons and tons of crafting, because crafting, if you ask me, crafting is art. If you are making something, you are making art. But it definitely helps to have an understanding of some of those design principles and to have some of that foundation so that you can take your creations to the next level if that's what you want to do. I will have more videos coming up, like I said, so make sure if that's something that you're interested in that you're subscribed if you're not already, and make sure you turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of my future videos. All right, so I'm just going to continue coloring this portion. We're not going to do the entire dahlia today. I just wanted to share this little portion with you guys, and I also wanted to take the time to thank you all for all of the support that you've given me for going on this journey of W+9 with me. When I first started W+9 in 2010, I just jumped in both feet right into the deep end. I left my career as a usability designer and a graphic artist, and just you guys welcomed me open arms. I still cannot believe it. I love everything about this industry, from the other business owners to the consumers. I think that we, hands down, have the best community and the best industry. So I'm 100% looking forward to supporting all of the other wonderful companies in the industry. And I hope that you guys are as excited about this next chapter as I am. But in the meantime, if you are looking to score some great deals, make sure you check out this website, w+9.com. I'll have it linked in the description box below, along with all the supplies I used in today's video. But again, if you're looking for some great deals, make sure you check it out. And with Christmas coming up, it's a great opportunity to pick up those gifts for any of your crafty friends at a good discount. So I'm just going to put a 40% discount site-wide on the store, so I don't have to go in and manually change all of the prices, and the prices will be reflected in the cart. So no coupon codes, no red text everywhere. You just, whatever you want, grab it, and the 40% discount will be reflected in the cart. Okay, so back to our dahlia here. You can see I've pretty much finished up this center, and this definitely looks very realistic, very 3D. It looks like all those petals are curled up coming at you, forming a tight little ball. And now I'm just going to share one of the petals here. Just like I did with the center area there, I started with that YG11, added the R22, pulled that out with the R01, softened that R01 with the YR20, and then used the E quadruple 0 to pull that all the way to the end of the petal. And I'll just continue that same method all the way around. And you can see, you would have never guessed with the color combo I showed you at the beginning that this is the result you would end up with, but it's, you saw it. Those are the only colors I used. Sometimes I might come in with another layer, but those colors created this super vibrant reddish orange dahlia that I'm just in love with. I went ahead and finished coloring the rest of this image, and you can see there that I fixed those hideous blue leaves by just going over them with the green. And then I trimmed this panel down and turned it into my card. Now for the sentiment, I used the Miss U, which is included in the stamp set. I just heat embossed that in white onto a slate gray cardstock and then simply mounted that with a little foam tape. Love the simplicity of this and how it really lets all of that coloring shine. You can see here all the nuances of color in those white hydrangeas, but they definitely still read as white. We didn't use, in fact, I don't think I used any gray on these at all. I used all of our blues, our blue violets, some green, some pink. Well, you guys saw it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for all of your support thus far, and I hope that you continue to join me and support me for what's to come. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.